The place to begin, a good place to begin. Number one, we are absolutely not what we have been told. Number two, we are so much more than we have ever been led to believe. The bottom line for all of us.
Gregg Braden is
a brilliant scientist and author,
a spiritual leader,
and an all-around remarkable human being.
Jobs, careers, finance, healing, health, all of them are powerful triggers, but emotion is one of the most powerful epigenetic triggers. Men have been conditioned to deny their emotions, but to repress is a detriment.
Certain things which I would eat, how I would train, would change the way that I look. And then when I was changing the way that I looked, I became more confident and happier with myself.
What you're doing is you're sending a different chemical signal to the genes, and the genes will then rearrange themselves.
What do you think is currently ignored by the media but will be studied by historians in the future?
I think that...
Now, before we jump into today's episode, I just want to mention that this podcast is brought to you by me and everything that I have built to help you guys level up. If you want to transform your physique, build muscle, lose body fat, build strength, then you have the Thirst app. This has everything inside that you could possibly need to get yourself in shape, to hold yourself accountable as well. I also have the digital playbook, which is a step-by-step guide to help you guys build a following, monetize the following, and also build a strong personal brand. This is everything which I have done over the past nearly 10 years to allow myself to live a life of financial freedom and also geographical freedom. I can basically do whatever I want. Life is good. And I also have my newsletter, which has been revamped, where I'll share exclusive podcast insights, my raw thoughts on business, fitness, and much, much more. So if you're interested about any of those, check out the description. You'll find the links to all of them. Now let's get cracking with the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to First Things First. We have Gregg Braden in the building. Unfortunately, you can't be there with him in person, but a remote conversation is better than no conversation. How are you doing today?
Hey, brother, I am doing really well. I'm sort of in the building because once you get to Earth, everything's close, right?
Yeah.
So, this first time you and I have worked together. I'm honored to be with you and your community. I think it'd be a little bit different kind of a program typically than maybe a little bit different audience than who I typically speak with. But, you know, we're all in this world, we're all in this life together, and we're all looking for pretty much the same things. And I'm happy to be able to contribute, Mike, in whatever way I can. But before we do that, I just want to take a minute. I have followed you. I'm a fan of Mike Thurston, and I want to thank you for the work you do. No, I want to thank you for the work you do in the community you've created. And the way that you have gone about creating that community. And I'm honored to contribute whatever way I can today. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And conversations like today, the ones that I get most excited about, and it seems to be what the audience like to hear about. When I've had Dr. Greer on and Matt LaCroix, he seems to pull in, both of them pulled in a very big audience. Both those have performed very well. So it seems to be the case that people are interested in things like this. Spirituality, ancient civilizations, basically information out there which is, for some reason or another, restricted or hidden from us.
Well, you know, Mike, my experience, this is a 45th year I've offered this work. I'm in my 70s now, and I started young. And what I have found is one of the mistakes that we have all been led to make is trying to separate spirituality from our everyday lives, trying to separate the past from the present. There's a continuity that is unfolding in our lives. Is ancient history ancient? Absolutely. Is it obsolete? Absolutely not. Because our ancestors were trying to solve the same problems that we're trying to solve today. Different environment, certainly, different technology. Same problems. And I think to the degree that we can recognize that continuity, we honor those who've come before us, and we don't have to reinvent so many wheels. We can learn a lot from our past. Yeah. I think the place to begin, a good place to begin, number one, we are absolutely not what we have been told. Number two, we are so much more than we have ever been led to believe. There is a massive body of peer-reviewed scientific evidence from today, current, that supports those statements. There is a history, a cultural history from around the world and across cultures that also support that history. It's not science, but it is the anecdotal evidence of how they went about being the best version of themselves. The bottom line for all of us, there's an unspoken, any Star Trek fans will know what this term means. It's the prime directive. The prime directive means the ultimate goal in our lives. We all have a prime directive. We all have an ultimate goal. We may not be conscious of it. And our society really doesn't do much to support it. But that goal is we want to be whole. We want to be complete. We want to be the best version of ourselves. And I'll tell you, Mike, we will stop at nothing. We will stop at nothing to find that wholeness, even to the degree we will deceive ourselves into following paths in life that we may not understand in an attempt to find that wholeness. And that goes with intimate relationships, that goes with jobs, careers, finance, healing, health. Everything is all about us becoming that best version of ourselves, finding that wholeness. Now, there's a spiritual component to that, because when we are the best version of ourselves, we defeat and triumph over forces in this world that have existed long before we ever got here that we call evil. And evil plays a powerful role in our world today. It wears many faces. Evil is masked. There is technological evil, the algorithms that lead us to believe things about ourselves that are not true. That is an expression of evil. Psychological evil, the movement to break the social bonds that hold families together and communities and societies together. Because when those bonds are broken, we're more vulnerable to the ideas and the agendas of other people that serve them. They may not serve us. So there's a deeply spiritual component to seeking our wholeness as well. And I'm going to say that our conversation is a dance, my brother. It's a dance. I'm happy for you to lead, and I'm going to follow your lead.
Yeah.
We'll go wherever you want to go. Nothing is off the table, and I'm going to leave it to you to take us there.
I'm curious to know, first of all, why is it that some people have this hunger or this, I don't know, thirst where they're trying to, they want to find out more. They want to ask more questions. For example, I've heard you speak about your brother. You speak very highly of him, but even though you're brought up in the same environment, you both turned out to be very different people. You went on one path, he went on another path. And I see this with myself and with my brother and some of my friends that I went to school with. They all seem to, feel as though, okay, this is my life. This is how it's going to be. I'm going to listen to what I'm told to do, and I'll just do what everybody around me does. And then there's other people, and I feel like I am one of those people where I'm like, actually, no, like, I don't agree with a lot of this. I don't agree with what I'm being told I should do. I want to take a different path. I want to live life on my own terms. And then I want to question everything that I'm told, all the information that is kind of thrown down my throat, whether it be on news outlets, on social media. I want to question everything. So why is it that some people are one way and other people are another way?
It all comes down to the filters through which the lens through which we perceive and interpret the world around us. And those filters, scientists call them epigenetics. So the environment that our mother was in when we were in her womb, that environment built the chemical signals that course through her body as well as ours when we're in the womb. If our mother is in a safe environment, we're going to have one kind of chemical signals that nature assumes that we will be in the same environment that our mother is in. So nature will program us, at least initially, and this is important, at least initially, to have the same perceptions of the environment when we're born that our mother has, so that we can have a good start in life. if our mother is living on the streets of LA or in a refugee camp in Syria, where every moment of every day is fight or flight, that cues up a chemical component, high levels of stress, high levels of cortisol, high levels of adrenaline, and our bodies will be epigenetically programmed for that, at least initially. And those provide the filters. We'll see the world is not safe, and we'll see the world is threatening, and we'll always be on the defense, and we'll always be suspicious of people around us. We'll be maybe more cautious in making friends. And those filters are very real. But here's what I want to say. We are only defined by our past if we choose to be defined by our past because of epigenetics. Epi means above. What that means is that we have the ability to reprogram those chemical signals. We have the ability to reprogram those chemical codes. This is one of the mysteries of life. Why some people have the initiative to do that while others may not. So the example you're giving, for those viewers that may not be familiar, I don't talk about this a lot. It's not a secret. If it's relevant, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm the product of a very dysfunctional, abusive, alcoholic family. My father was the abuser. Mother was the protector. Any of our alcoholic family friends out there know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was early in my life, it was not safe to be in our home. Now, for reasons that I can't completely explain, I was born with what I call a very strong soul compass. From an early age, I had a good sense of who I am. I was never swayed by peer pressure, never succumbed to peer pressure back in, I'm a child of the 50s and 60s. There was a lot going on in the 50s and 60s. And, and it was fascinating. It was a great time to be in the world as an observer.
You were living with a rock band, weren't you?
Well, I was, yeah. I left home when I was 14. I became a guitar player at 8, left home at 14, moved in with my rock band, and they were all in their 20s and 30s. And I was 14 years old, and this was in the 60s, so there was a lot of excess happening in the house. And I never participated in that excess. I always knew I didn't have the language, the vocabulary that I have now, but I knew that my body, was a gift to me, and that I knew that I would need my body in this world to do good things, and that the healthier that I could make myself, the better I could keep the promise to myself to bring good into the world. So, that is what I attribute to a soul compass. My younger brother, we came from the same environment. And we both early on were in a fearful, dangerous environment. And for reasons that I cannot say with absolute certainty because I'm not in his body, he chose to cling to that environment because it appears safer to stay with what you know, even if it's not healthy, because it's what he knows. And he's a good man. He's a little rough on the outside. For those listening in the United States, he identifies himself as what's called a redneck, proudly a redneck. So he's, a little rough around the edges, but he's a good man inside, and he's had a tough life. He's had tough relationships, tough jobs, surrounded by supervisors that don't recognize his skills and talents, don't honor and respect him. And the same with, in his case, the women that he has attracted into his life. And he believes that he is locked into that because of his past and because of his environment. So I think one of the most powerful things we can do, it all begins with the way we think. Mike, and I know you know that. If we don't know that we are not what we've been told, if we don't know that we're more than we've ever even allowed ourselves to imagine, if we don't know that, if we don't feel that we're worthy of a healthy, intimate relationship with another human, and if we don't feel that we have value in this world, and everyone at some point has to come to terms, why am I here? Doesn't have to be a big, grandiose kind of thing. It could be as simple as we're here to experience beauty on a planet that has tremendous beauty. And maybe we don't have that in a spiritual world, as not in a physical body, or, it doesn't have to be any big grand thing, but I think everyone needs to have a sense of purpose. And I'm just going to can I give you a quick story about that? A quick example. Yeah. I was leading, I've led groups into ancient indigenous sites, since I was able to travel out of the country. Egypt, Bolivia, Peru, Tibet, India, Nepal, Australia, all through the desert Southwest, to be with indigenous people, to learn with them. And what is it they know that we've forgotten? Or what is it they know that we're only now beginning to understand? So I was in Tibet in the early 2000s, and I was walking with a Tibetan nun to a chanting hall with a translator. My Tibetan is terrible. And she was telling me about the history of this particular part of Tibet. And we went into the chanting hall, and the guide, he said, did you learn a lot? And I said, well, yeah. Excuse me. I said, she told me about the history. I don't know how she remembers all this. I said, but she told me about the history I've never read in the history books. And he says, well, yeah. He said, she should know that because she lived that history. And I said, no. I said, this was over 100 years ago. And he says, yeah. How old do you think she is? And I said, I don't know, 80. And he said, she's 130, 132 at that time. And this isn't uncommon in the Tibetan, they don't have it in the Guinness Book of World Records, but they routinely live 120s, 130s. And so I asked her, the translator, I said, what do you attribute your longevity to? And she said, what would my sisters do if I wasn't here? Who would make the meals for them? Who would help them with their studies? Who would teach them the prayers and the practices? The bottom line, every morning she woke up, she was driven by the sense that she was needed in the world. And the science shows us that feeling of purpose has a chemical component in our bodies as well. We have a stronger immune response, hormonal responses, longevity enzymes. We all have longevity enzymes.
Yeah, I've noticed this when, older couples are together for a very long time and then they pass away. The moment that one of them has passed away, the other one passes away very quickly after that. Because it's almost like they're both like living. My grandparents were like this. They'd been married for over 75 years. They'd been together for such a long period of time. And then, they were both getting quite old, fragile, feeble. Yeah. And when one of them passed away, the other one passed very quickly.
Yeah, not long after.
They knew.
Well, their lives were so entwined. So that was a long story to a short point. And the point is that having a sense of purpose plays a powerful role in our lives as well. The discovery of what we call epigenetics goes a long way in helping us to understand this. Again, epi is above, so it means we may have a predisposition to a certain genetic makeup. So my younger brother, he's 4 years younger than I. We came into the world with a genetic predisposition for stress, fear, uncertainty, high levels of adrenaline, cortisol, things like that. But epigenetics says that you can change that, and you can change it through epigenetic triggers. And this is where the spirituality comes in, because I think many of your viewers may know or may not know. Excuse me, I've got allergies here in New Mexico today. I apologize for that. that those epigenetic triggers, when I was working in the high-tech industry, I was the senior computer systems designer during the Cold War years, the defense industry. I was first tech ops manager at Cisco Systems. And I say that because I've had the opportunity to be around very advanced technology. And what I've seen is the more advanced the technology is behind the scenes, the simpler the user interface. Okay? And we know that from a mobile phone. You press a picture on the phone, you touch an icon with your finger, and you set into motion a whole series of events to pay your bills and talk to your friends. And all you did was touch a picture. Well, our bodies work very much the same way. We are very complex behind the scenes, but the user interface is very simple. And that user interface was identified in our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions. The user interface is thought, feeling, emotion, breath, focus, movement, and nutrition. So any combination of those, they're called epigenetic triggers. When we take responsibility for our lives and the circumstances of our lives and the condition of our bodies, and if we accept it the way it is, fine. If we want to change it, these are the epigenetic triggers. When you change your thought, feeling, emotion, belief, breath, focus, nutrition, and movement, it sends powerful signals throughout the genome. And our genes will actually reprogram themselves in response to what it is we're feeding them. I wish somebody had told me that, when I was in school. It probably would have saved me a lot of difficulty in my life. But this is why we are never defined by our past unless we choose to be defined by our past. And for some people, the first step is recognizing that very principle, that they don't have to be defined by the difficult circumstances of their past. They may, and many people choose that because it's an easy path, but you don't have to be. So the first step is to know that you're not what you've been told, to know that you're more than you've even probably imagined in your mind. And now these are very rock solid, they're called triggers, epigenetic triggers. These are the keys to put into motion what you now know to be true. If you're not what you've been defined as in the past, how do you change that? Well, those are the triggers. Now, what's so interesting, all of them are powerful triggers, but emotion is one of the most powerful epigenetic triggers. And for men, and especially men in the modern world and men in the Western world, even I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. Even in the Middle East, men have been conditioned to deny their emotions. So it doesn't mean that, you have to go, crying all the time in front of all your friends. That's not what I'm saying. But to repress what it is that you're feeling is a detriment. And it can actually produce chemicals in the body that work directly in opposition for what we choose. In other words, if we want to be the best version of ourselves, but we're fighting a belief system of hurt or betrayal. Betrayal is a big one for men. Most men at some point in their lives feel betrayed by their father. At some point, not everyone, but even good relationships, a father will betray, on some level, and that's a very deep betrayal. And that has epigenetic consequences about trust. And trust, all those have chemical components in the body. So to the degree that we can acknowledge and resolve, there's nothing wrong with fear, and there's nothing wrong with hurt. There's nothing wrong with betrayal, because we're all going to have it. Where we run into the problem is unresolved hurt, unresolved betrayal, unresolved anger, unresolved jealousy, unresolved rage. And these are very typical for, male emotions.
Yeah, and then you'll have to deal with that in relationships if those people or even yourself hasn't resolved it? How are you going to have a happy relationship if you're bringing a load of baggage from a previous one?
Sure. Well, you'll probably have a very difficult relationship. And the irony is we tend to reel in relationships with other people that mirror those very qualities so that they can be healed. If we don't know that, we just go from partner to partner to partner, or job to job to job. We reel in supervisors that betray us, supervisors that are angry, supervisors that don't honor our skills. You say, well, I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to quit this relationship, go to another city, new job, new relationship. And, same thing happens again. We all know that story because it's about us. So the beauty is that we can change all of that. The difficulty is that it begins with accepting responsibility for what's happening in our lives. And we're not taught to do that. That's not the conditioning. We're taught to blame the world. And to blame the world for our own suffering and our own circumstances. So these are some of the deeply spiritual principles when we begin to understand. I'm going to make a distinction. Spirituality does not imply religion. There is a vast difference between spirituality and religion. So let me just define that real quick because we're using these terms. Spirituality, in its truest sense, is about relationships. It's about our relationship to our own bodies, our relationship to the earth, our relationship to other people, our relationship to the past, to the future, ultimately our relationship to God or a higher power. So spirituality is about those relationships. Religion and spirituality has been with us for a very, very, very long time. Religions came along much later and wrapped the rules and the dogma around the power of spiritual principles so that they could be controlled. So religion is created by people, mostly by men, as a way to repress and in many cases deny the deep truth of our relationship, our direct relationship to the earth, to our bodies, to God. Religion says you need to go through another power or another force to have those relationships. So I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality. Spirituality is the hotline. It's the direct link that we have with these fundamental forces in our lives.
We'll get back to the podcast in a second, but first of all, I want to say a massive shout out to Bionic. I have been using their supplements for the past 4 years. I never knew what supplements I needed to take. I'd always go into the pharmacy and buy a load of random bottles and end up popping pills all day, every day, not having a clue if I was consuming the vitamins which I should be consuming at all. But Bionic came to save the day. They are a tailor-made supplement company that will put together your own specific formula based on your activity, your gender. I have Bionic Pro, where I get the blood test done every 3 to 4 months, and based on that blood test, I get my own personalized formula. For those people who don't want to do a blood test or don't have access to that, then you can go with Bionic Go, where you just have to fill in a short questionnaire, and based on that questionnaire, you will get your tailored supplements with a surprisingly high degree of accuracy. So stop the guesswork, sign up to Bionic, and ensure that you remove those deficiencies and build up your immune system. What do you see humans being capable of and looking like if we've really, truly, fully understood how everything works and what we're capable of?
Well, this is, we don't know the answer to that because we have yet to fully explore what that means. So I have a new book came out in January, and this doesn't have to be about that book. The title of the book was called Pure Human. And the whole theme of the book is that we happen to be living in an age and a time right now where we are being taught, and our young people are being taught, that we are a flawed form of life, FLAWED, flawed form of life. And because we are flawed, we need something outside of ourselves to be the best version of ourselves. And that something is being touted as technology. We're being told that we need technology inside of our bodies to compete in the world and to be the best version of ourselves. And so now you're seeing a movement called the transhuman movement. Trans means beyond. So beyond human, that is encouraging young people and people my age as well to embrace computer chips in the brain, chemicals in the blood, RFID chips under the skin, nano sensors, nanotransmitters in the respiratory system and the circulatory system, all in the name of progress and what some scientists are saying is the next step in human evolution. I was at a conference recently, and there was a scientist that challenged me and said, isn't this the next natural step in human evolution? The answer is no, 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 no. It is not the next step in natural human evolution, and here's the reason. We're only beginning to understand what it means to be human. And when we replace our biology with technology, what happens is our natural systems begin to atrophy. And pretty soon they fail altogether because our body is an on-demand system. You know this from bodybuilding. If there's an adage in biology that is called use it or lose it. Let me just give an example of this. When I was a kid back in 1950s, 1960s, we were told that when we come into this world, we have X number of brain cells, fixed number at birth. And every beer that you drink and every glass of wine that you drink kills brain cells. And that was the leverage to get kids to stop drinking. Well, we now know that that's not true. That's not a reason to drink. I'm not saying alcohol is good for anyone. But here's what the science is showing us. We are producing new brain cells until the last breath we take on this planet. That Tibetan nun at 130, she's producing new brain cells, but there's a catch. If those new brain cells are not engaged and used in a meaningful way within about a week, 5 to 7 days, they will atrophy and they will die because they believe they're not needed because the body hasn't used them. That principle applies to the entire human body, not just brain cells. That principle applies to muscles. It applies to the reproductive system. It applies to the immune system. And we have very good evidence to back all of this up, peer-reviewed scientific evidence. If you replace those systems with synthetics, with artificial technology, those systems sense that they're no longer needed. And because they're not being used, they will begin to atrophy in one generation. Next generation, the body says, oh, we used to do those things, but we don't because, we've got a computer chip doing it for us, or AI in the body doing it, or chemicals in the blood mimicking our immune response. So we don't do that anymore. This is how you lose a species. And the reason I wrote this book is because there are proposals by the year 2030. The title of the book is called Pure Human. What the best minds of our time are telling us is if we do not change the trajectory that we're on right now, we are the last generation of pure humans that this world will know by the year 2030. If the laws are passed and the policies are accepted, they're being proposed from the United Nations, from the World Health Organization, from World Economic Forum, WEF, by local legislation here in the United States. All of those are proposing some degree of technology, not just in the world, which I have no problem with, but in our bodies, which I have a big problem with. And there's a very good reason for this. About 7 years ago, scientists began looking at the human body very differently. I want to answer your question in a really good way here. We've always been taught to think of biology as like sticky, wet, gooey, mushy stuff in the cells and in the body. And we we talk about it in biology books. That's the way it's always been. Here's what changed. Scientists began looking at the human body from an IT perspective, information technology. And what they found is a mind blower, because what they found is the average body, first of all, just in general, the average body has about 50 trillion cells in an average human body, whatever average is, some more, some less. Every one of those cells, literally, this isn't a metaphor, is literally an electrical circuit. It's a tiny electrical circuit. It's got an input and an output. And in the cell, we have all the equivalents of the electrical components in our gadgets. We have, in our cells, we have the equivalents of transistors, resistors, capacitors. Every cell in the body emits photons of light that we can measure and receives photons from the world around us. Light is information. So we are transmitting and receiving codes of information into our body that program our bodies. Every cell in our body functions as a chip. It stores memory. It retrieves information. It retrieves that memory. Every cell in the DNA in our bodies. In our DNA, we carry a record of every successful genetic transaction from the first of our species 200,000 years ago. Now, I'm going to use 3 words, and these are going to be very familiar, and especially people in Dubai. The record that we carry in our bodies, it is immutable, it's transparent, and it is secure. And those are the very principles that define blockchain technology that the new crypto and decentralized finance is based on. The external technology, crypto, literally mimics the way we store information in our DNA because we do it so well. Scientists have now compared the human brain to a microprocessor in a study that was done at the Salk Institute in Northern California. 2022 is when they did this study. So it's pretty recent. And what they found, they compared the synapses in the brain to the transistors on a computer chip, on a microprocessor. And interestingly, there's about the same number of synapses in the brain as there are in our most advanced computer chips. So it's about a 1-to-1 correspondence. In the bottom line, they found that the human brain not only meets, but it exceeds the capacity of those computer chips, over 100-fold more efficient in processing information. Is the chip fast? Yes. Is the chip efficient? Yes. Is the chip scalable? This is the kicker. The computer chip will always be limited by the physics of the stuff that it's made of. So if it's a silicon chip, you look at the atoms inside of the silicon chip, information is always going to be limited by how fast it can move between those atoms. Now, what you say is the chip is fast, it's efficient, but it's not scalable beyond a certain point. Now you look at a human neuron. It's fast, it's efficient. Is it scalable? Every time they push a human brain, every time they push neurons to what we accepted as the limits in the past, our brains do something those chips don't do. They morph and they adapt to the new conditions, and they open up a whole new vista of biological potential. And then we fill that in, and it happens again and again and again. What is the upper limit of a human neuron? What's the upper limit of the brain? And the answer is we don't know. Because every time we reach those limits, we blow right past them because we morph and adapt through epigenetics to accommodate those limits. So we're fast, we're efficient. What is our scalability? It appears to be infinite. We don't know where that ends. Mm-hmm. And it goes on and on. It's a very different way of looking at the body. We are literally a highly advanced, technologically sophisticated, soft technology. So we're not a primitive hard technology like a silicon chip in wires. We're more than that. We're neurons and cell membranes and ion potentials and pH moving across cell walls. And here's the beauty. Our user interface is very, very simple. Thought, feeling, emotion, breath, focus, nutrition, and movement. And we're only beginning to understand what our full capacity is. So the reason I wrote this book is because we are on the verge of giving our humanness away before we even know fully what it means to be human. We don't even know the limits of our own capacities. And in one generation, we could lose it all to machines, to AI and technology. I personally think we're worth preserving. I think there's something so rare, and this is where it gets into the spiritual principles. There's something so rare and so beautiful and so precious about a human life and a human body that we're only beginning to understand. And I think we need to know at least know what it is we're giving away before we let it go. We owe it to ourselves. And this is why the body being the best version of ourselves is part of that. So does that make any sense if I say it that way, Mike?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I was listening to a conversation with my friend Chris Williamson and Naval Ravikant, and he said something interesting. He was asked, what do you think is currently ignored by the media but will be studied by historians in the future? And he's a smart guy, and he said just how bad modern science is, and that we don't fully understand our biology, and it's in a very sorry state. And we're basically in the Stone Age when it comes to medicine. Like, when you think about it, if we get an illness or, we have an issue with our bodies, often it's a case where, we'll just need to remove it, or we need to amputate it, or we'll just fill you full of all these pills, but it doesn't really, a lot of the time, help the situation. And, still, apparently, we haven't found a cure for cancer, but I'm fairly confident. I do believe that the cures out there do exist, but we haven't.
Yeah, well, I agree, but we'll never find a cure for cancer per se because there is no one cancer. Cancer is very personalized. And what all a cancer is, what many people fail to recognize is it's not a foreign object in the body. The cancer is the body. It comes from within. And it's the result of epigenetics. It's either too much of something we don't need or not enough of something that we do need. And emotions play a powerful role in, there are a lot of studies now. This is as fascinating. I mean, we could do a whole program on this, where cancers often they are associated with tissue, organs, and glands linked to the unresolved emotions that we're dealing with. So breast cancer, for example, on the uptick with women, has been directly linked with psychologists with the inability or the lack of opportunity of nurturing. And the breasts are linked with nurturing. You talk to a lot of men. So let me I'll share a really interesting one about men. Prostate issues tend to show up in men over the age of 40, not in all men. But when they do show up, it typically is going to be over the age of 40. And the problem is the prostate enlarges in the body and it causes a lot of problems. Well, a medical interpretation of that, they want to cut it out or they want to, do whatever they want to do. And sometimes that's necessary. And if it is, I think people should do it just to have a better quality of life. If you're looking at the spiritual component, men associate prostate with their ability to defend their families, defend their values, with the ability to provide for their families. And as they get older, and I'm not saying this is accurate, but the subconscious says, oh, if my prostate is directly linked, if emotionally I link my manhood and my ability to be a male in this world to that prostate gland to defend and provide for my family, then the bigger the gland, the better I can defend. The bigger the gland, the better I can provide for. And what's really interesting, really, really interesting, when you go into embryo technology, the tissue that is the male prostate When a man is defined in the womb, it's the same tissue as if it's a woman, it becomes the uterus. Uterine tissue and prostate tissue are the same tissue. When the cells differentiate, we become male and female. So the uterus in the woman is linked emotionally, also with nurturing and with providing for life. So it would make perfect sense that the prostate is also linked with emotionally with nurturing and providing for life. It's a different way of looking at things, but it goes to show where the spiritual links and how emotion can influence the physical body in tangible and concrete ways. It's not like a metaphor. I mean, this is there's a lot of peer-reviewed science.
I believe in it as well, is because you might be walking down the street and you see somebody, and there's some people that just look like physically they have a face which either looks depressed, angry, or sad, and you can just tell that person is just constantly having a conversation with themselves or just telling themselves negative thoughts. That they're not happy with themselves, who they are. Maybe they're disrespecting their body as well. Whereas I don't know when this changed for me. I think it probably came about the time when I started going to the gym. Like whenever I looked in the mirror, I was always very proud of what I would see in front of it. And I liked the fact that I was in control of being able to change it. So certain actions, certain things which I would eat, how I would train, would change the way that I look. And then when I was changing the way that I looked, I became more confident and happier with myself. And then from that came more positive thoughts, like overall a better mindset, which then, I don't know how true this is or whether it's been proved, but that can also, in my opinion, have a knock-on effect of you also looking different. You know how some people just have like a glow? They're just giving off this like vibe, like they're just looking, like healthy and
Mike,
inviting.
what you're describing is epigenetics. Because it's thought, feeling, emotion, breath, focus, nutrition, movement. When you begin thinking differently about yourself, feeling differently about yourself, providing different nutrition for yourself, what you're doing is you're sending a different chemical signal to the genes, and the genes will then rearrange themselves to reflect what it is that you're feeding those genes, and you become a very different person. There's, all of this, we're talking about one level. This is on the physical level, in the gym, being the best version of ourselves. And I love the work you do with that. I learned early on, back when I was 13, 14 years old, that whatever life was going to bring to my doorstep, I didn't know what challenges would come, but I knew that I would have to be in the best shape ever to be able to meet those challenges. Whereas a lot of friends of mine that I went to school with, when life would bring a challenge to their doorstep, they would do just the opposite. They would try to numb that challenge through drugs, alcohol, and just general neglect of their bodies. Some of them are no longer in this world. Some of them are in this world, and they're not happy because they're not feeling well, because their bodies aren't working for them very well. So yes, to all of those things on one level, I want to tie, before we leave, and I want to tie this into an earlier conversation that's not always easy to have, and it's not a popular conversation, yet it's very real in our world. The conversation about good and evil, that when I was a kid growing up, it was kind of a joke. You'd have a little red devil on one shoulder and an angel over here, and they were always, having a conversation. We are living in a time where evil is the goal of evil is to deny our humanness. All right. Now that's important, to deny us being the best version of ourselves. It's called divinity. And that's a whole different conversation. But the goal of evil is to deny human divinity. Divinity, what does that mean? It's our ability to love, our ability to forgive, empathy, sympathy, compassion. Healing our bodies is an expression. These are all creativity, imagination. These are all expressions of human divinity. The goal of evil is to deny human divinity in this world. And what we are seeing in the world right now is a rise in the efforts to do just that. We're witnessing on a massive scale. Ultimately, go back 40,000 feet, look at the big picture. You're seeing good and evil play out in this world. You're seeing it play out kinetically in the battles, whether it's Ukraine or what's happening in Gaza or wherever it is. That's kinetic evil playing out. You're seeing it play out psychologically through the algorithms that are dividing us and making us hate one another and pitting families members against family members. That's psychological evil. You're seeing technological evil because the introduction of synthetics and AI into the human body to replace our own natural abilities denies us the ability to be the best version of ourselves. That is an expression of evil. So ultimately, by being the best version of ourselves, go to the gym, eat well, high nutrition, dense nutrition foods, be healthy, get good sleep, think positive thoughts. When we become the best version of ourselves, what we've done is we have triumphed over that evil. Don't have to know that. But what it says is that when we take care of ourselves, that's good, that's important, but we're actually a bridge. Every time one of us models in the world through example, we become a living bridge that makes it easier for the next and the next and the next, because somebody has to do it first. We are a species. We need to see living examples of what's possible. And it's always been that way throughout history. That's why Jesus of Nazareth is probably the best known example, but it doesn't end there. That's the one most people can relate to without religion. He was just an amazing man, very learned, very smart. He traveled, he understood healing. He understood a lot of these very deep spiritual principles. That's why his words were edited out of the modern religious and biblical texts by the church. And we know that because they were found, rediscovered in the mid 1940s in what's called the Nag Hammadi Library, Nag Hammadi, Egypt, where we have the lost books. The Gospel of Thomas was where Thomas literally followed and wrote the sayings of Jesus of Nazareth, a very learned man, not from a religious perspective, but he was given deep insights into our relationship with ourselves and with the world around us in terms of nutrition. One of the most powerful statements he ever made, that his students asked him, they said, "Master, what should we eat?" And, he could go through a whole list and say, do eat this, don't eat this. He made it real simple. He said, those things that steal life from your food will steal life from your body. And those things that give life to your food will give life to your body. Therefore, eat that which gives life to your body. Man, that is brilliant wisdom, over 2,000 years old. And that solves a lot of problems when you're asking yourself what to eat today. You can go to the grocery store and you'll see boxes that of things that are called food that came out of a machine, that have never seen sunlight, never seen the earth, completely processed. Now, will they fill up the space in our stomach? Yes. Are they nutritious for our bodies? Possibly not. And they may actually be detrimental to the body. So what is it that we eat? The closer you can get your food to its natural state, the better off you're going to be. If you're going to eat meat, eat good quality, healthy meat. If you're going to eat, fish and vegetables, get them closer, less processed is better. So that's just an example.
Is there anything you're doing in particular to, I know, I think you said you wanted to live to age 200, but even right now, you're looking pretty damn good. So, like, what are you doing?
I do my very best to live in my life everything that I share from a stage or in a book, number one, and to live in my life what I learned from those ancient and indigenous traditions, what I learned from the Tibetans, what I learned from the shamans in the Yucatan and in Peru. I'm a very disciplined man. but I'm not a highly structured man. And what I mean by that is I'm disciplined in the sense that there are promises I make to myself every day in terms of what I will eat, and the way I move my body. Those are the promises, and I'll keep them. They may not be structured in the sense I may not do a workout every day at 10 a.m. Uh, I have a routine. I do resistance training three times a week, cardio a couple times a week. I've been a martial artist all my life. I'm fascinated by Tai Chi now as a martial art, as an offensive art as well. Um, I do my very best to be a good, positive person in this world, to contribute to the world every day in a meaningful way. And that varies from day to day. And I'm a work in progress. I'm still dealing with coming from a dysfunctional family. I lost my mom to COVID. I was blessed to have her as long as I did. In an alcoholic family where my father was the abuser, my mom was the protector. And even though I was an older man when I lost my mom, when she passed, it kicked my ass. And I couldn't understand why. I actually ended up in the ER twice with chest pains. I thought that I was having a cardiac event. And both times they tested and everything. They said, "Man, you're really healthy." And then a nurse came in and she said, "What's going on in your life?" And I told her, I said, I just lost my mom. And she said, "You're dealing with unresolved grief." And I had no idea that grief it actually cramps little muscles around the heart, and it can seem like you're having a cardio event. Here's the reason I'm sharing the story is because emotionally and psychologically, my mom was always my protector in that dysfunctional family. And there was a part of me when she died, a part of my male self just freaked out and said, "My protector is gone. I'm vulnerable in the world." And I had to go to grief counseling, a couple of sessions, and never had another problem. It just took a couple of sessions of taking responsibility and accepting and acknowledging the role that my mom had played in my life. And, I'm in my 70s now. So, you would think I would think something like that would have been resolved earlier, but it wasn't until she left the world that it came up for me. And that's why I say I'm a work in progress.
What do you think happens when we die?
There's a whole story around that. I think we have a choice when we leave this world. And we are, as to whether or not we come back to this world, as to whether or not we recycle or not. There's a difference between the spirit and the soul. And the spirit, I believe, is the part of us that is timeless, it's ageless. And we've had enough near-death experiences and clinical cases of people that die and come back. I think that affirms that there is something that continues. It doesn't just end. I think a lot of what happens when we leave the world is directly linked to the quality of what we choose to make ourselves while we're in this world. And I don't think about that a lot. I sense that it is a tremendous, it's a blessing. It's a rare opportunity to be in this world. And especially now, Mike, this isn't business as usual. The world is going through, very few people are talking about this. We're in a process. This isn't business as usual. The process has a beginning and an end. We're in it. The only way out of it is to go through it. We're going through a remaking of the world, and there are attempts to remake our bodies. I'm pushing back on the remaking of our bodies. I think there are things we can do differently in the world. I believe that we owe it to I think maybe the way I'll close this conversation, the question we're all asking ourselves, it's all about love. It all comes down to love. And the question is, do we love ourselves enough to accept the deep truth of what it means to be human in this world and to fully embrace the power and the awesome power and the potential that is implied with our humanness? And that's not a question that we answer with words. We answer it through our actions, the choices we make, the way we nourish our bodies, the way we honor one another in this world. That's how we answer that question. I think that question's up for all of us right now.
So where can people find out more about that?
Yeah, the new book is called Pure Human. You can go on Amazon, pick up a copy of Pure Human, The Hidden Truth of Our Divinity, Power, and Destiny. I believe it is our destiny to unlock the full potential of what it means to be human on a physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual level. And I think we need to do it quickly, because if we don't do this for ourselves, there are forces in the world that have agendas that will roll right over our sovereignty and our freedom as humans. And that's a whole conversation we could have maybe in a part 2 if we have another conversation. Yeah.
What if there was the opportunity for you to live to 200, like it was going to be guaranteed, but in exchange for that, you would have to have a microchip in your head? Would you do it?
I wouldn't.
No.
I wouldn't do that, because this is what this I've got multiple chapters of the book showing this. In many cases, we meet and even exceed the capacity of the technology that they're trying to put into our bodies. The technology in our bodies is designed to disempower us, not empower us. It's designed to bring us into a level of control and a loss of sovereignty that personally I think is counter to our evolution. It's counter to our divinity. It steals from us the very qualities that we cherish as humans. It steals from us qualities like imagination, creativity, forgiveness, love, empathy. We still function and we still follow orders. We still take commands in the world, but we lose the very essence of what it means to be human. And I personally believe that we're worth preserving. So I've got boundaries. I'll never be marked on my body by another human, and I will never take that technology from another human inside the gift that was given to me when I came into this world. And those are very clear boundaries for me. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I'd love to speak for longer, but you've got a busy day ahead of you. So if everyone's looking, you've got your books. Where can people find you on social media?
Website, greggbraden.com, GreggBraden.com. Mm-hmm. Books are available wherever books are sold. Amazon's probably the easiest. Mike, I want to thank you for your trust, because we've never done this. The truth is you didn't know what I would say, and you've entrusted me with your community, and I want you to know I appreciate that. Appreciate all the good work you do. I'm inspired by you, my brother, and I look forward to seeing future podcasts. You've got awesome guests that you bring on. You got some brilliant guests, and I look forward to our next as well. I want to thank those brothers behind the scenes that are making this possible. I heard their voices. Yeah. I didn't see their faces. I know they're there. So thank you all for all the good work you do. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.